Good day, citizens of the free world. From border to border, coast to coast, and to all the ships at sea, I bring you a warm welcome. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and thank you for tuning in to the Tate Chronicles today. Join me as we cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. Our mission is simple. We're searching for beneficial disruption in healthcare from emerging technologies. My guest today is Sophia Lopez. She's the founder and COO of Kaleido, a Consensys Enterprise Business. Sophia has an engineering degree from Harvard University and an MBA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, just down the road from me. I met Sophia recently at the HIMSS conference in Orlando and spent some time with Kaleido's blockchain business cloud application. Sophia, thanks for joining me and our audience on this episode of the Tate Chronicles. Good to have you.
Thanks, Jim. Good to be here.
The Kaleido website contains this promise: blockchain technologies made radically simple for enterprise. I guess that's a good place to start, Sophia. Simplicity is a good thing. It almost seems like that what Kaleido is offering, and maybe what is offering, is blockchain as a service. Is that what's being offered here?
Yeah, Jim, exactly. That's what we're offering. We really believe, and there's a tremendous amount of promise that blockchain brings to core enterprise systems that for decades have been run a certain way. And now as we look at digital transformation, new technologies available to us, like blockchain, expectations of how customers want to interact. Let's say in healthcare specifically, I think we're all very familiar with things that we really just need to improve around population health, care coordination, getting at sort of single view of the patient, and then sort of the self-sovereign aspects of taking more ownership and responsibility for your own healthcare and being empowered to do that, and being able to make decisions around your data and who gets to see that and who owns that. A lot of these topics and concerns really are not being served by these systems. If you look at some of the popular EMRs, go back to database systems from the 1960s, like MUMPS, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So blockchain is enormously exciting because of the potential it has, and it really aligns with the way businesses are looking to work in a more collaborative way together around really important use cases, and looking at shared data for business value and collaboration around that. Mm-hmm. So I've been in the blockchain space since 2015, worked with hundreds of clients in previous roles before I co-founded Kaleido, and just saw people really struggling to get past the proof of concept phase. And then myself and my co-founder, Steve Cervini, founded Kaleido. We had a point of view about how you can build it from the ground up, build a platform that would be delivered, as you mentioned, as a service. Blockchain is a service, but the entire platform, including associated technologies that run alongside the blockchain that are really important to build solutions, and do that in a way that really accelerates clients' journey from proof of concept to pilot to production.
One thing that has fascinated me about blockchain, of course, some folks like to call it distributed ledger technology, but as far as I'm concerned, we're all talking about the same thing. Almost everyone I talk to tells the same story of how they first heard about this concept and they thought about it, and then at some point they had an aha moment and realized there was some great potential in this technology. Did you have a moment like that, or was it just gradual for you, Sophia?
It's interesting. I've been asked this question before. In 2015, when I first started looking at blockchain, I actually had the P&L, the profit and loss responsibility for a multi-billion-dollar portfolio in the enterprise system space. Had that across hardware, software, and services, specifically driving growth areas. The cloud, analytics, mobile, security were primary focus areas, but we looked at IoT and some other technologies. So started looking at blockchain as part of that, and really came to the realization very quickly that if you look at transformations that have happened, with the internet, and then how we've moved through the client server era and through eras of technology at the enterprise level, a lot of those innovations have been at the web, the commerce, and the data the database level, but they haven't reached into the systems of record. So what happens is you have very siloed ledgers that companies all maintain, and now you run into all of these now associated issues around, you have sort of a central clearinghouse, you have a middleman, you have reconciliation costs, you have things, although you can run, transactions per second, which are really, unheard of. You think about 40, 50 years ago, but then it still takes 5 days to do a post-trade settlement. Doesn't really matter how fast your transaction per second is if the actual business process is very manual, very paper-based. There's a lot of friction and inefficiencies, and a lot of that is people reconciling their copy of their database in their system of record with what the other company has, and then there's disputes, and now you need to bring in an external party or auditor to reconcile that. So, when you takes 5 days for a post-trade settlement, when, our machines in theory can move very quickly, there's a problem there that is, really causing a lot of issues. And in the healthcare space, well, one example of the way our legacy systems are set up in the healthcare space I could think of, it's very recent for me, is that, the broader firm we're part of, it's the venture studio model, and we could talk about that later, moved from one PEO to another PEO that services larger organizations.
Sure.
So we worked through this PEO to apply for, get onboarded to major insurance carrier, one of the top 3 in the U.S. Literally took 2 weeks for me to find out my new membership number and to be able to go to a pharmacy and get medications. And meanwhile, I have a child who needs medication. They have a long-term health condition. And, I have heard doctors and nurses saying, we need your insurance information. And, it's just, I don't think any consumer, but especially in the healthcare space, can stand for, you have these batch systems that operate, and it's all of the offboarding and onboarding of the old insurance plan to the new insurance plan, and all going through all of those separate siloed systems of record to actually then 2 weeks later be able to give someone a membership ID number and, the identifying information they need to go to their local pharmacy and fill a prescription, that's just not acceptable anymore. And the companies who don't figure out how to solve those problems are going to get left behind and disrupted. So people use the term disrupted. It sounds maybe a little melodramatic, but, people vote with their pocketbooks, and they, in the healthcare space, it's even more important. It's not a luxury or a convenience. To really, can be life or death to have the quicker service and access to services that you need.
Well, and I know some folks in business, when they hear the word disruption, there may be some fear around that. But I often think of the Pony Express carrying paper envelopes from St. Louis to San Francisco, and as soon as the telegraph wire was hauled across the desert, Pony Express ended after 18 months. It died in 2 weeks when that wire went out there, and I don't think anybody misses the Pony Express. Tell me a little something about the relationship between Consensys and Kaleido, because out here in the hinterlands, Consensys is seen as the mothership that's birthing all these blockchain entities. Help me understand the relationship between Consensys and Kaleido.
Sure. Consensys was started by Joseph Lubin, and Joe was the co-founder of Ethereum. He really felt that when you have a new technology and this protocol, innovation at the protocol and open source level, you really need that ecosystem of development tools and infrastructure built around that in order for people to be able to accelerate the adoption of that technology and realize the benefits. He set up Consensys as a venture studio model. So sometimes it's been described as a hub and spoke model. You have some core centralized services around HR, legal, finance, marketing. And then the spokes or the projects are all people who've come on board very entrepreneurially minded, who feel that they really understand a core problem in a certain space. It could be an industry vertical. It could be something more horizontal, like supply chain, for example. and it could be horizontal in the case of Kaleido as really being the underlying blockchain platform that these other projects or solutions can sit on top of, and addressing some of the core pain points around getting your arms around the core technology, running these nodes and networks, and then the tools, governance, workflow around that, integrating with your core systems. So Consensys has really attracted a lot of the top talent, blockchain-related industry. I'd say they're the number one, largest blockchain pure play today, focused on a couple of areas. So Kaleido squarely in the enterprise space. We're looking at how can we transform B2B transaction processing and B2B business processes, bring those business relationships and the right use cases around sort of shared views of this data and that collaboration onto a blockchain. So it's really taking existing relationships and existing needs, existing work to be done in the service of others, and using blockchain to really enable much better, outcomes in terms of cost and speed, risk, user experience.
Sure, right. And one of the things that really impressed me about just when I first saw your tools at HIMSS a couple of weeks ago, the whole concept of a foundational tool set to work, to create a blockchain, to work with the blockchain, to set up a blockchain. And Kaleido seems to have created that, again, blockchain as a service, and it's a full stack of technology there, tools that we need if this technology is really going to live up to its promise. Now, I'm not worried about blockchain because any new technology, if it has real benefit, is going to find its way. But to me, it was a critical milestone to see tools starting to become available that will allow the potential to become, the rollout become more mature and robust. One thing you mentioned, Sophia, is about where we are in all of this. 10 years ago, probably the Bitcoin blockchain was a month old. 2 years ago, we had the beginning of the token, the crypto mania. I'm kind of glad that's kind of washed through the system. Hopefully it's washed through the system. And what I saw at HIMSS was some focus on some real use cases, specifically on healthcare, but certainly that span other industries. So it was really good to see that. But the next year or two, what do you think we're going to be seeing? Is it going to be more industries doing use case analysis to see if it works for their particular, bring efficiency to their processes, or how do you see where we are in this whole trajectory?
A great question. What I've seen since 2015 is that people were actively experimenting at the use case level at that point already. I mean, large organizations back then maybe had 10 different use cases they were exploring and pilots. And I think people have come a long way since then. So with Kaleido, as I mentioned, we really help people focus on the business value and ROI and iterating really quickly on the use case. So maybe 2 years ago, people might spend, months to year, maybe up to millions of dollars, write thousands of lines of code to get a blockchain proof of concept going. And a lot of that was just because of the challenges we talked about. Like at the core technology, you're looking at distributed P2P networks, so very different skill set and programming paradigm. You have heavy cryptographies involved. It's heavily containerized type workloads. These are new skills, new programming languages and frameworks. And especially in the healthcare space, if you look at the large network of providers and payers who are interacting with employers and other healthcare, the life sciences side of the healthcare and life sciences industry as well. You have many actors there. A lot of people, if you look at the provider organizations, their IT staff are more used to getting packages that are tailored to the healthcare space versus digging into open source code and figuring out new programming models and building things from scratch. Like only the largest of healthcare systems could afford that sort of exploration and keep those sorts of large teams on staff, because you think, in a provider system, we're really focused on patient health and supporting the doctors and what they need versus experimenting with new building blocks that you have to assemble yourself. So if you look at that POC level, projects were getting stalled for that reason. Now, to go to a pilot, you look at the challenges, this across all industries companies were facing. It's the first time you're really doing shared IT. And that is what we like to call it, because now you have one copy of the data that's shared among all the participants, one copy of the application logic that's shared, and you're basically, running this application across multiple parties, and they have their IT footprints in different data centers or cloud properties. And now something as simple as onboarding a new member, it becomes complicated because the tools and workflow hadn't been built at that time, and this is one of the core problems that Kaleido was built to address. We heard at HIMSS there was a really great use case that about 6 different healthcare key actors had put together, the mix of providers and other players in the space, and people got really excited in the audience. So it's provider data management and said, well, how can I sign up? I want to join this consortium. I want to get the benefits. They had tangible benefits they shared from this proof of concept. The problem is they can't onboard new clients easily. And it was like a built for purpose, more of a brittle, not easily scalable, not elastic, and it certainly requires a certain level of IT staff and expertise that you're not going to be able to onboard 100 new people who could benefit from this use case overnight, right? So Kaleido bringing all of that to you as a service really helps people focus on the business use case and value and not on how do I onboard a new member. And, who's going to be voting on decisions and policy changes, who has the audit log, who gets the visibility, because it's really shared IT. Everyone owns a piece of the network, as we like to say, but no one controls the whole network. So in that scenario, you really need to, have this sort of enabling platform that can help people get the benefits of this distributed control, the shared view, that secure targeted sharing of the healthcare data. You're getting the data integrity and transparency, the resilience, availability of the network that comes with the decentralization, preventing fraud, all of the better, faster, cheaper elements without getting stuck on, how do we run and manage this network together. And then really the third challenge, as we do have clients who've moved into production very quickly on Kaleido, it's just integrating with existing systems and sources of data. It's high availability. It's disaster recovery. It's all of the security, performance that you'd want. So you're taking the new challenges of blockchain and marrying them with all the existing, ongoing, enterprise considerations that organizations need to consider. But I think what's changed a lot in the last few years, to your initial question, is that now you can see, healthcare organizations really being able to focus on what they want to do and accomplish with this use case and the business value proposition, and rapidly spin up an environment in minutes, invite multiple members to the network, onboard new members in a minute, the next week when there's someone else who wants to join, and really about the collaboration around that shared data for that value to reduce healthcare costs, improve patient outcomes, improve patient engagement experience, and improving the healthcare professional experience. Those are all areas that are really good places for healthcare life sciences organizations to look into with blockchain.
Sure. I see the great advantage to be able to have the tools to quickly set up and experiment and test different use cases. There's obvious use cases that blockchain seems to bring real potential to existing things like provider and healthcare provider credentialing and supply chain and existing processes which efficiencies can be brought to. And one thing I've been thinking about lately, Sophia, is not existing use cases, but new opportunities that may occur only because we have the foundational attributes of a blockchain. And the example I often think of is when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, we didn't know that Uber was born that day. And so the same way, we're all working on these use cases, which is great, but at some point, I can't wait to see some absolutely new use cases that are brand new that, not just improving on some existing inefficient system, but some things that start occurring that we haven't even thought about yet. So it's really an exciting time. There's no doubt about that. The customers and clients come to Kaleido. Are they looking for business use case analysis, or have they already done that? Do you work with startups?
We work with a whole spectrum of folks who come to the platform. So some people are very early in their explorations and looking to understand use cases. We have people on the other end of the spectrum that have been trying to build these networks and run them themselves for a couple of years, and they realize that is not the high-value layer they want to play in. They want to bring their domain expertise, those existing business relationships, and really focus on driving change. I think it's really exciting, but we've helped clients. If you look at one in the healthcare space, the CDC had seen us when we went live in May of last year with our public offering, and they said, we have a public health surveillance system, FIN messaging service, FINMS, that's, I think it was 18 years old, and they think they track about this disease surveillance program, about 96 disease conditions, wanted to tackle tuberculosis, and were able to, initially said, they told us they had a 9-month project scoped out for this, but when they saw Kaleido, realized they could do that in less than 3 months, and because they were able to just sit on top of Kaleido, and were able to rapidly get that MVP up as a prototype, and by the end of the summer, now they're publicly speaking about what they're doing, going to the local HIMSS associations, getting states onboarded. But if you look at something as important as disease surveillance, in the U.S. and in other countries, it's really, and you have a lot of players, common view of the data, extreme health imperative to move quickly, to act, and obviously it starts with just accurate data, collaboration, and monitoring. It's really an exciting example of being able to move really quickly around a use case where you have these older messaging systems or transaction systems that can now be moved onto a blockchain with existing players, but now being able to interact in a way they've never been to before. And then I guess my last point, just to the exciting, what's the art of the possible, like you have an evolution, which is like this FinMS system, but you have a revolution of going from the smartphone to Uber. There's genomics and precision medicine consortium in China that's been running on Kaleido, and they're building out a whole new business network there around all the players around genomic data and tackling diabetes, which is a really big problem in China now. So just the early identification, prevention, and management of diabetes using precision medicine and genomics. And of course, they, in every country has their own sort of healthcare system, existing players, and sort of different communication rails set up for exchanging data. And sometimes other countries can actually, move faster because there might not be as much of an infrastructure that is existingly in place, and they could just leapfrog to the new technology. We've actually seen that in places like the Philippines, where they're looking at financial inclusion. The very 6 weeks, we're able to get 6 banks working together around domestic remittances, looking at the 35 million unbanked Filipinos, and then now have gotten central bank approval, and they have 480 rural banks. And this is looking to, transform the lives in these rural communities, because these were unbanked segments of the population, and the banks themselves are unbanked because they weren't connected to SWIFT or any of the payment rails. The same way that you saw emerging markets going from landlines to cell phone, like skipping over landlines to cell phone, you can see some of these emerging markets moving very quickly with these new technologies because they're able to leapfrog to blockchain versus sort of catching up on some of the legacy or heritage technologies.
And my other current major interest other than blockchain healthcare is precision medicine. I spent a lot of time at HIMSS looking at precision medicine and what's being done with genomic data. It's fascinating. Sophia, does Consensys have any type of industry-specific specialization for different domains?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I'm really glad you asked me about that. I think a really important focus of Consensys going forward is to serve the needs of industry verticals that have their own set of use cases, regulatory compliance frameworks, and dynamics, just as how the technology may have evolved in that industry set. So it's really exciting to see that level of expertise being applied to solve blockchain, problems and more solve client problems using blockchain. So we're very lucky to have Heather Flannery has joined Consensys last year and has formed Consensys Health. So she's brought together an industry-specific stack of technologies that are really focused at the key healthcare use cases that we were talking about earlier, and bringing that domain expertise. She's been on the leading edge of, the IEEE blockchain task force, the HIMSS blockchain task force, and she's really worked to bring the whole community forward in this space. So marrying, that community building sort of regulatory lens with enabling technologies around specific use cases where blockchain can drive the most value is tremendously exciting.
Yep. Okay, great. Sophia, it's flown by, but we're totally out of time. I want to thank our audience for joining us on this episode of the Tate Chronicles. I offer a special salute to my guest, Sophia Lopez. Thanks for coming in today. Thanks for coming aboard, Sophia.
Thanks, Jim. And yep. I do encourage everyone who sat with us today to go to Kaleido.io. Yep. It's Kaleido as in kaleidoscope. So Kaleido.io, we have perpetually free starter plans, so you can learn about the technology yourself. We've got a knowledge base, lots of great articles, yep. All the fundamental concepts through to example code for developers, example use cases for people more in the line of business side. And just very happy to help people with their journey to adopt blockchain and really realize the promise and benefits of it.
Well, thanks so much for including that at the end. So thanks to everybody for coming aboard today. You can find out more information on this show's program page at HealthcareNOWradio.com. Until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors.